the ears and the tusks. These are Asian elephants. It's very difficult to keep African elephants in captivity. And any kind of circus elephant you ever see are always Asian elephants. And this is just some of the memorabilia, some of the, the pamphlets I've collected. And my cousin and I were bidding against each other once on eBay. We didn't know it. So stuff pops up once in a while. And they did a lot of photo shoots there for products. Like these are some cereal shoots that they did, which are kind of fun. And that's when the park was closing. Very sad that happened. And it closed in right after Labor Day in 1961. Was its last hurrah. And it was closed. So now you can tell your big story. This is a good one.
I love this. My father, when he was in his late 90s, you could always ask him questions and he could come up with a story about it immediately. And I used to say, what was the happiest day of your life, Dad? What was the saddest? What was the weirdest thing you ever saw? And what were you the most proud of? So I asked him this one day. I said, Dad, what was the happiest day in your life? He said, oh, I thought he was going to say when he married my mother or when I was born, but he didn't. He said, as you know, I lived up north in the cold and I was very poor. And he said, it was very, very difficult for me because I wasn't even in school yet. But I wanted to see a circus. And a circus was coming to town. So he said, I got up the morning they were going to put the tents up. Sneaked out in the dark, walked to the fairgrounds, and got there and saw some men. And I said, would you please give me a job, sir, so I can see the circus? He said, oh, get out of here. He was determined that he wasn't going to let them get away with it. So he went to a couple other men and said, please, sir, give me a job so I can see the circus. They said, will you get the heck out of here? And just then he saw a red-headed man walking toward him, shaking his finger, saying, are you the kid that's bothering everybody to get a job to see the circus? And my dad said, I swallowed real hard, and I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I've got jobs for you to do. And when you're through, ask for Red. Yes, sir. So when he finished, he went and he found Red, and Red took him by his little hand. Now, remember, he was only about 5. He thinks he was 4, but he was 5. Red walked him into the big tent. Put him right on the front bench. And he said, now you sit there and don't you move. So he said, yes, sir. And then he started to think because he looked around and the tent was empty and he thought, oh my gosh, if a policeman comes in and asks me for a ticket and I don't have one, he'll put me in jail and my mother and dad will never see me. And just then he looked and he saw people were coming in and it wasn't too long before it was filled. Then all of a sudden, he heard something so magnificent, so beautiful, he couldn't believe it. The band started to play. He had never heard music in his life. Can you believe that? Never hearing music in his life. And he said, I had so many emotions. I wanted to laugh, I wanted to cry, I wanted to do all this stuff, but I knew I had to sit down because the parade was starting. And he said, I saw all these cowboys on horses. I saw clowns, I saw beautiful girls, a girl on an elephant, and some horses pulling a lion in a cage, a real lion. And when they got to his side, he said, I could almost put my hand out and touch it. Then he said there was a drum roll, and everybody's eyes turned to the silver screen doorway. And through it came the most beautiful white horse he had ever seen in his life. And sitting on top of it was a real cowboy, white boots, white pants, white leather jacket with fringe, and a tall white hair. In those days, cowboys had tall hair. The star of the show. And when he came in to go around the arena, everybody stood up and clapped and roared. They were so thrilled to see him. And then a strange thing happened. The horse stopped in front of him, got down on one knee, and bowed to him.
Wow.
Wow. He looked to see if everybody was watching. Wow, that's terrific. And another strange thing happened. The cowboy turned to look at him, and he winked, and he too bowed. But as he bowed, he removed his hat, revealing his red hair. It wasn't through though. The cowboy had a megaphone, and he took it and he yelled to all the people, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet my new friend, Johnny. Stand up, Johnny. And he said, when I stood up, everybody roared and clapped and that. And he said, and then he galloped off up to go out. And he said, I knew I was going to get a spanking when I got home. But I didn't care, because I knew that this was and would always be the happiest day of my life.
Very good.
But he used to tell me stories about everything. So, that was that.
Questions?
Other questions about
Oh,
Africa
yeah.
USA?
Yes.
Did the animals come so tame?
Did what?
Did the animals come from Africa?
Oh,
so
yes,
can-
they all
like
came
the
into Port
cheetahs?
Everglades.
Tame?
Tame.
Well, the animals, I think the cheetahs were tame, and they had tamed the chimpanzee, but the rest of the animals, I think, got used to people, but they were dangerous animals. They did not have, obviously, carnivorous animals out that people were with, but as she said, the ostrich was the most dangerous animal there by far.
Believe that.
And I have done a couple of presentations in Boca, and people that are now in their 70s say to me, oh, we'd break in there at night, we'd run with the animals. My grandfather owned the shoes.
Wow.
I mean, they have big horns on them.
Where did they go when the park was shut down? Where did the animals go?
They were sold to zoos all over the country. A lot went to Busch Gardens. In
Yes.
fact, I believe the zebras they have there, because they have the Grevy zebra, I think are the descendants of the Africa USA zebra. A lot of people think that lion country somehow morphed into, Africa USA morphed into lion country, but that didn't open until 1967. So none of the animals from Africa USA, unless they were sold and sold again, ended up at lion country. Well, probably
This
the
is one
idea.
thing for grandparents to know too. My dad loved the gardens, especially when the kids came in. He would pull up a potato plant to show them how all the potatoes were on. But he always got a thrill when he pulled up the peanut plant to show them all the peanuts. Now that's an idea that he did to us when we were kids, that you can do for your grandchildren. Plant a piece of a
Peanuts.
potato, plant a peanut, and when it gets up into a bush, pull it up and show them. Another thing he always did too, because we were poor, he would catch pollywogs and tadpoles. And he'd put them in a bowl of water. And the first thing you would see were two legs coming out on each side of the tail.
Wow.
Two legs in the front, and the tail was fell into the body, and you had little frogs. He did all this because we were very, very poor.
Now, the chicken coop story, which he didn't tell, so I'll tell it. When they were in Wilton Manors, it was during World War II, and you had a building moratorium because all the supplies were to go to the war effort. However, you were allowed to build chicken coops because they raised chickens for the war effort. Nobody said that the chicken coops couldn't really be houses and shaped like a house. So he built small houses, left the windows and doors out, and the chickens would go in there, and then, they were all ready. So when the war was over, he quickly cleaned them out, put in windows and doors, and had little houses and cottages ready to sell to the servicemen coming back and families. So he built a lot of these little things as chicken coops.
Wow.
So he was always figuring out a way to be clever like that, to get around. When someone said no, my dad was the same way. When you said no, that was a big red flag. Now I have to find a way to do this. Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
What year did your grandfather, or your father, what year did he die?
96.
Yeah, 1996.
1996.
Yeah, he was born in 1897.
So, and he died in 96?
No, he died at 99.
I know, in 99, but
Yeah.
in 1996.
In 1996.
So
yes.
he got to see man land on the moon.
He did.
Yeah, he's,
What do you think he thought was the greatest invention? I asked him, I said, what is the greatest invention of your life? I thought he was going to say telephone, television.
air conditioning.
No, you're close. The refrigerator.
Refrigerator.
Because he said, you don't know what it's like when you have to eat spoiled food. And he said, we had to eat spoiled food as kids. It didn't matter because there was nothing else to eat. You ate it, you got a little sick. But he said to me, to him, the refrigerator was the most amazing device that you used every day, and he appreciated the most.
He was in there, he also had one of the first microwave ovens. Yeah, you remember.
10th
He
Avenue.
was over at the house. It was huge, it was this big, I could fit into it. But I want to say one quick thing. When he sold after U.S.A., the whole family came up here to Lake Worth. We lived on 20 acres at 10th Avenue in Florida Mango, where there's like apartments there. On the lake there, we watched it being dug. He had a bunch of drag lines and dump trucks that took all the muck to the Palm Beach golf course. And he tried to recreate the waterfall that was at After U.S.A. We had a big giant waterfall with a pond. He dug out the lake, had 3 islands. And then I want to put a little plug and then I go back to my camera. He eventually took the whole family, including my uncle and my cousins, and my mother and father, my brother. I was the only one that didn't go. They all moved to Australia. And they lived over in Australia for a number of years. And then they finally came back to Lake Worth, and my grandfather died here in Lake Worth, and we still live in this area. You're the dean of Florida Atlantic University, of Palm Beach State. And my mother, just to give you a little preview, recently wrote a book. We're getting it published now, and I think we're going to have something at the library about Australia. It's a book called Up Over to Down Under. It's very, very funny. So you'll be seeing that in about 2 months.
I wanted you to know that when they moved to Australia, my husband bought their car.
Yes.
Another question. So, your dad had this after U.S.A. before Busch Gardens?
It was, yeah, Busch Gardens opened at the tail end. I think Busch Gardens opened in 57, 58.
Yeah.
Was much smaller, of course, than it is
Do you
today.
think that maybe because of Augusta Busch?
Yeah, very well could be.
It might have been
Yeah.
smart growth or a
And then there's
right?
the other Africa USA. There was my grandfather never took out a trademark on the name Africa USA. He had incorporated as that in the state of Florida, but he didn't have a national trademark, and so they opened in Vallejo, California. It was called Marineland Africa USA in the early 60s, and it was open until in the late 80s, early 90s. So if you type in Google Africa USA, you're going to get a lot of hits from the other one that was in California.
But you have the domain after USA.
I do, Africa-USA.com.
Hyphen.
Yeah, with a hyphen. If you want to see, there's pictures and video and other things. A lot of what you've seen here.
In fact, they had a dedication down where the lake and the geyser is, big plaque.
Yeah, there's a historical marker there where the grounds are. And for some unknown reason, there's this hippo statue, which I don't know, what somebody had donated it, and there was never a hippo at Africa USA. It's like, what? So it's kind of interesting. So this is actually from a matchbook cover, a little graphic that I think is kind of cute.
You don't know how relieved he was to sell the place. Because he was so worried about all the things that could happen, kids getting in there, cutting the wires. And everybody said he was happy. He was. Her father and my mother were not, because they wanted the family to keep on with it. I didn't want it, my father didn't want it.
It's a lot of worry. It's something you could not do today. Imagine that, and the reason they have to charge $100 is the insurance, is the security, is the 24-hour cameras, and yada, 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 yada. And you start adding that all up, and that's why the tickets are $100 at Disney World, and their ticket would be $10.
Wow.
So, pretty amazing. They had a vet on call. His son is now retired, Dr. McGowan, and he had some great stories to tell. He was a Delray veterinarian, so.
And that red tick thing was a big farce.
Yeah, that was interesting.
The land was similar to Africa for these animals?
It really was
How
very
about the
similar
diet?
climate.
Were you able to?
They had a regular hay and feed diet. They
Uh-huh.
used like a chow and feed and other kinds of things. Bananas, a lot of things that grew on the property, they let the animals eat as well. But it was actually very similar to a savanna kind of environment. The weather is of course hot, and it probably got a little colder at night in winter than it did in Africa, but they seem to do okay in the climate.
A lot of these people that have homes there in this subdivision, if they dig down, they might find a zebra or a giraffe. Or a giraffe on somebody's place, so,
They might find some teeth might be left. I don't know if some of the
Wow.
bones would be left.
well, their skins would be there, I'm sure.
Very good.
But it was exciting, it was really exciting.
It's a wonderful thing.
And imagine having all that land right across the
Oh, boy.
I know,
over
I don't want to
to, right in
imagine.
the house.
There were other attractions for tourists coming down to Florida at different times. I'm curious how they are. Barn Hill Mounds was one I know with that
Ancient America.
Ancient
Yeah, there was,
America.
I mean, the roadside attraction, that's what people did, so up and down US 1, all the way to Jacksonville, there was these mom and pop, Autorama, the James Melton place, there was Bianca Birds, there was,
Melton's
Wait,
Car.
Alligator farm.
Alligator Farm, Wade Bird Farm,
Did they all
Storyland.
exist?
Yes, they all existed at the same time. So, and that's just in our general area, and there were many more if you went north. There was McKee Gardens, which I think might be still open in Vero.
It was a while back. Like
yeah.
10 years ago, it was still open.
There wasn't a lot, you know, in the Stewart area, Hope Sound, it was pretty desolate and deserted, but once you hit Palm Beach County, there was the little attractions. Of course, the citrus groves, and, you know, you buy the bag of citrus and all that kind of stuff, and the shells and all that.
Well, then you got down to Miami.
Snake farms, baby alligator farms.
What do you think
Yeah.
was the first celebrity to go there? Christine. Do you all remember who Christine was? That was the first man that had an operation to get rid of. She sat next to my father. My father always sat out in front with old clothes to talk to people. And she sat there and talked, and when she left, he came down by all of us and said, "Boy, that's one heck of a woman." We all started to laugh, and he said, "What are you laughing at?" We said, "That wasn't a woman, that's a man." And he said, "Oh, you're always trying to pull my leg." Because everything was black or white, you know, there was nothing in between. And one time he was sitting out there, and the guy next to him said, my wife and I are very good friends of the Pedersons. And my dad said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yes, we play cards with them once a week." And my dad said, "Funny, I don't know you." And he said, "Why should you know me?" He said, "Because I'm Mr. Pederson." And I got up and walked away.
And my parents actually met there. My mother was on vacation from Wisconsin and had mutual friends of them, and they had their first date. So my dad took, you know, drove the Jeep, and he's taking her back in the back. Oh, she's so impressed. And the elephants were there, and they saw my mother, and the one elephant became enraged with jealousy because he was paying all the attention to her. So the elephant took a snout full of dirt and sprayed my mother down her big dress. Because the elephant really could sense, like, oh, he's just moving in on my territory here. He was not happy. So they really have a lot of feelings, and you know, they knew their people and the people that took care of them.
Well, that's when he fell in love with her when he was cleaning her up.
Yeah.
And the first girl I ever kissed was Jack Parr's daughter.
Right.
We have
Now,
lots of
that's a
other
trivia
secrets too.
It was always cute to see the elephants, and you happened to be on the safari, playing in the water, because they blow their trumpets and they throw water at each other. It was absolutely adorable. You saw so many things that were cute.
So was your house out on the property?
No, well, it was on the very front,
Yes.
and they built it on a hill. It was 40 feet above sea level, and they had it up on the hill by the entrance.
Yeah, I
I'd
can
see a
show
lot of
you.
funny things. I mean, they'd be waiting because there would be a car in the parking lot, and they knew that somebody was in there, and out would come a man and a woman, walk by to get their car in the dark, and she had leaves all over her back. They saw a lot of funny things.
They have,
But
Shirley?
we're amazed that they never grew up.
Their house was basically about right here, when it wasn't built at this time, but they built it, this is 4th Avenue in Boca. Nothing there then, so that basically is where it was. So their house was eventually built right here on the property.
What were the mosquitoes like back then?
They didn't have mosquitoes. I don't remember mosquitoes, do you?
Well, they were there, but it wasn't anything,
Oh, they didn't
no
have it
worse
at
than New
nighttime.
Jersey.
They were there.
Daytime, yeah, I think they
They were
did.
there.
Oh, not there.
No, he didn't do it at nighttime, he just had the place in the daytime.
So this is the El Rio Canal here. You can see as it snakes through today, and you see the exact same waterway right here. So, and all of these these are all dug. He dug all of these water features for the animals.
How long did it take them to build it?
About 2 years, I think they worked on it, because they bought the property in '51, and this was all Meisner's old property, that this was going to be the Meisner developments. So Meisner went broke, and so the city and the county owned all this land, and it stood since the 20s with nothing on it. The government never used it either for the Air Force Base, so they were very glad to just see it go. So it was interesting, so.
Seeing that you're still there, I was gonna bring copies of it, but I didn't. One of the ways my dad made money was, during the Depression, he got a hold of his friend who owned a lumber yard. And he said, John, I'm going to lose my lumber yard. And I'll make a deal with you. I know you bought a lot of land out in the country. I'll make a deal. It's enough to build 100 houses. And I'm going to give it to you so cheap you won't believe it. So Dad did buy it. And he built 100 houses. And I've got a newspaper ad at home that says, buy one house for $1,900 on a half-acre land, and buy another for a penny.
Oh.
Buy 5 stores,
Wow.
and you can have another 5 stores with living quarters for 2 cents.
Wow.
And how many do you think he sold?
Oh,
Not a one. You know why? It was the Depression. Nobody had any money. So he did something that the banks got very mad at. He told the people they could lease them, and the money they paid would go toward the cost if they wanted to buy it. And that's what he did for years. The bank said, there's gotta be something illegal about that. There's gotta be.
Rent to own or
And
whatever.
again, it was very obvious. He would sometimes take a handshake. But that's how he gained some money to go to Florida too. And then in the very beginning, when he was really poor, my mother invented a tie-back. And it was 3 flowers on a band made out of oilcloth. They sold for 10 cents a pair. And people were very poor then, of course, you know, and they were nice because you could wipe them off and that. And my dad went down to Chicago, dressed very shabbily. And he went into McCrory's, and he said, I'm selling these, and they asked how much, and they said, oh, they'll take like 3 gross or something. My dad didn't even know what a gross was. And he said, oh, all right. And then he said, oh, wait a minute. Are you making fun of me the way I'm dressed in that, and you're just doing this to, you know, get me mad? And they said, no, we really want them. So I said, okay. So he walked across the street to Sears. And the guy said, I saw you coming from McCrory's. He said, how many did they order? So Dad told him. He doubled the order. So my dad said, I'm going to be honest with you, sir. I don't have enough money but to fill half of their order. And the man said, I'll tell you what. If you sell it to me first, I'll pay you the whole thing. And when you'll get all of it, the entire, even the second half that you want. I said, oh my God. He went home and told my mother she couldn't believe it. They hired neighbors because they were way out in the country. And finally, they had 45 girls working in their cellar. Making these tie-backs. So that's how he was able to buy that land and buy the lumber company. But they used to go along the railroad track. If you want to be something or do something, you have to be determined.